I thought about this conversation as someone who has studied and written about responsible technology practices. And my research has been around how ethics gets used in organizations and what leaders can do to encourage ethics. So the lens I'm looking at this for is very much in an organizational setting, how people grapple with these issues of, these trade-offs between fairness and privacy and things, these concepts like trustworthiness in artificial intelligence and just trustworthiness overall. So first, a word about some core beliefs I hold that I want to share with the hope of inviting you to share them as well or share some of your core beliefs and some thoughts about how we navigate thorny issues like balancing privacy and fairness or privacy and security or any number of trade-offs that technology presents us with, as some of the other speakers have already touched upon. So we currently manage people and we use technology. And I believe we want to continue in that vein so that we don't end up managing technology and using people. And so for me, trustworthy AI is very much about preserving that reality that we are still very human-centered in the choices that we're making. So I also believe that to secure a trustworthy AI-enabled future is to secure one in which our service to humanity is valued more than our service to AI. So those are some of the beliefs that I come into the work that I do with, and they inform my thinking. So, as I say, I want to look at things in the organizational context, how people kind of grapple with this in the day-to-day decision making, because one of the things we were asked to do was think about actionable items that people could take away from this conversation, things they could actually do in their organization. And I believe that organizations move more nimbly and with purpose if they have a well-articulated set of values and principles that are guiding their use of technologies like artificial intelligence. So principles might guide specific use cases since decisions can be context dependent. And as Joe was just talking about, it really does depend on what sector you're looking at. If you're in healthcare, for example, privacy might be paramount. But if you're looking at in a hiring situation, then you might preference fairness as the aspect that you're elevating in that decision-making process. And it's true that many organizations have developed principles. And I want to say something that might be a little bit controversial. At last year's AI4People Summit, the case was made that we were sort of past this phase of principlism, that it served its purpose and people had developed their principles. But I think to some degree that's wishful thinking. I think many organizations, including some of our esteemed institutions of higher learning, have not yet articulated a clear enough set of principles that employees can actually use to navigate issues like these trade-offs between privacy and fairness, and that they can use when they're considering the design and the development and deployment of AI. And so principles that are consistent with an organization's core values, but specific to the responsible use of technology, actually grease the skids of decision making and are important for ethics in a way I'll discuss in a moment. So, like a lot of scholars, developing principles is something I've written about and even developed kind of a starter set of principles that organizations can use. And they look like a lot of other lists that people have. Accountability and explainability are on them, but they also have some concepts that are possibly not elevated enough. Things like investing in humanity and promoting human well-being. And in our set, we ground concepts like privacy and confidentiality and the safety, security, and reliability of technology as a means for respecting human dignity and rights. We have a principle that asks people to recognize that we share this earth with all living things, for example. And these principles of human dignity and rights, promoting human well-being, investing in humanity, protecting the environment, those are missing from too many of the lists that people are using right now to guide some of this decision-making around trustworthy AI. So that's another reason that I believe our work with principles is not yet done. So high-level principles aren't enough. And in our work, we're an applied ethics center. So we look at how people are actually using ethics in their professional decision-making. And we recommend that people get much more granular with these principles. They get more specific about defining them so that they can actually take action with them. But we also look at the organizational container that those principles are being applied in. And we know from research that we've done that there are conditions in those organizations that make it more likely for ethics to actually be used, for these decisions to actually be taken. One is a sense of responsibility to society, the idea that what the organization is doing is influencing society and in turn being influenced by it. Another is creating a climate of mutual trust and understanding. And that looks like decentralized decision making in organizations, which can only happen if you have some rubric for ethical decision making, some set of principles or values that you're using to make decisions. And it also looks like people feeling comfortable coming forward when they have concerns. And the last of these conditions is a set of ethical deliberation practices. This is things like using data to make your decisions instead of gut instinct, involving people. Mention has been made of those that are vulnerable, that might be impacted by your decisions, thinking about the downstream effects of them, and whenever possible, sharing the rationale behind them with people. All of these things are, as they say, conditions that help people to actually use ethics in organizations and contribute to their confidence that people are thinking about things like trustworthiness as they're making their decisions. So since we were asked to come up with some actionable strategies, I guess I recommend developing those principles that are human-centered. And if you have a set of principles that you're using to guide the decision making, to make sure that they're specific enough to be actionable, and to check for these conditions that I just shared as a way of preparing the organization to grapple with some of these tensions that we're talking about here today. So I'll leave it there. There's some other specific things that I know people are doing to manage the trade-off between privacy and fairness, which are a little more technical, that are kind of outside my expertise, but we can come back to those in the discussion.
Does that work?
Yeah, that worked.
Okay. Okay. So